Hello, my name is Christopher Lynch, and I will be walking you through the Colorado justice process. The first step is a crime has to occur, and on this date, 02/25/24, you called the police at your house at 7130 Aurora Avenue in Pueblo, California, for a domestic dispute with your husband. In this instance, law enforcement was involved in this part, police officers, and in this case, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, and the 14th Amendment were applicable. The Fourth Amendment protects people from unreasonable searches and seizures without a warrant. The Fifth Amendment, the suspect can remain silent and not incriminate themselves. And the 14th Amendment, people have the right to due process. The next step was an investigation. This took place at the on the call itself. A detective, and in this case, the responding police officer, made a report and submitted it to the district attorney, and the files were charged. The DA charged him with assault in the second degree, a class 4 felony with domestic violence enhancement. The responding officer interviewed the suspect, who did not request a lawyer, and admitted to the crime. They also interviewed witnesses / the victim and looked over the evidence. The people involved were the patrol officers on scene and or detective. And also, the court was involved with the DA. The constitutional amendments involved in this part of the case were the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, and the 14th Amendment. The Fourth Amendment protects people from unreasonable searches and seizures, like we just went over. The Fifth Amendment, your husband, the suspect involved in the crime, waived his right. He could have remained silent. And the 14th Amendment, the state cannot deny a person equal protection under the law. Also, people have a constitutional right to life, liberty, property that cannot be denied by the government. It says that people have the right to due process. This means that a person's legal rights must be respected when accused of a crime. The next step in this process was the arrest and arresting charges. In this case, law enforcement had probable cause and executed the arrest of the suspect on the spot. If the suspect was not located that night, a judge would have looked over the charges filed by the DA and would issue an arrest warrant if he felt probable. That a warrant, law enforcement would be executed. This means take the suspect into custody. The people involved in this step were the court and the district attorney deciding what charges would be brought against the offender, a judge signing off on the arrest warrant, and law enforcement executing the arrest. The applicable amendments to the Constitution were the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, and the 14th Amendment. The next step is custody and booking. In this step, the suspect is taken into custody by law enforcement and booked into jail. The people involved in this step in law enforcement are the arresting officer and correction officers at the jail. The Fifth Amendment can be applied. The suspect cannot be prosecuted or punished without be given due process. The suspect can also remain silent. The 14th Amendment is also applied here. The state cannot deny a person equal protection under the law. The next step is his or her first appearance / first advisement and second advisement. The suspect is brought before the judge soon after being taken into custody. The judge will decide if a bail will be set or no bail, and if bail is set, it will most likely be under certain guidelines, meaning conditions. These conditions will be he can't commit any more crimes, or it might also involve a restraining order, and he can't come near you during this court date. The people involved in this are the court, the judge, a defense attorney, public defender, and prosecuting lawyers. Law enforcement involved is correction officers if he is kept in custody, and probation officers if released with conditions. On the next page, you will find the constitutional amendments that apply to this step: the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, the Eighth Amendment, and the 14th Amendment. The next step is the preliminary hearing. In the preliminary hearing, the judge will listen to the prosecutor lay out the evidence in the case. The judge will decide if there is enough probable cause to move forward in the trial. If the judge thinks there is not enough probable cause in this step, the case will be dismissed. If that happens, the district attorney can bring it to a grand jury to decide if they can recharge the suspect. The suspect also has the right to waive this hearing if they choose to do so. The people involved in this step is the court. In the court is the judge, the defense attorneys, and prosecuting attorneys. On the next page, you'll find the amendments of the Constitution of the United States that apply to this step: the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, the Eighth Amendment, and the 14th Amendment. One more thing about the Eighth Amendment. It says that the court cannot set excessive bail. So the court decides to set a bail for release on conditional terms. It can't be so much that the suspect is unable to pay it. The next step in the process is an arraignment. In this step, the suspect will be informed of their constitutional rights, and if they do not have a lawyer at this point, one will be appointed to them at no cost. The judge will also inform the defendant of what possible punishments and sentences might be. This is also where the defendant can enter a guilty or not guilty plea if they decide to do so. People involved in this are defense attorneys, prosecuting attorneys, and the judge. The U.S. Constitution amendments applied to this are the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, the Eighth Amendment, and the 14th Amendment. The next step is a trial. At the beginning of this process, the defendant will have a choice to pick a bench trial, a trial decided by a judge, or a jury trial, which is decided by 12 impartial citizens. The defendant can change his or her guilty plea at this time, and lawyers will argue the case if the defendant is innocent or guilty. They will present evidence and file motions at this time. The jury or judge will hear testimony from eyewitnesses, experts on the evidence, and character witnesses. After the lawyers have argued their case to the judge, the jury was found guilty or not. A bench trial. If it is a bench trial, the judge will decide whether the defendant is guilty or not. And if it is a jury trial, the jury will decide. People involved in this step are the defense attorneys, the prosecuting attorneys, and the judge. The amendments applicable in this step are the Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, and 14th Amendment. Sentencing is the next step. After the trial, the defendant is found guilty, there will be a sentencing hearing. This is usually at a later date to give the judge some time for a pre-sentencing investigation to go over the information, like criminal past history of the defendant. This will also give the judge a baseline for what kind of sentence they think is warranted for the crime. If the suspect is found not guilty, they will be released on their own cognizances. People involved in this step are the court. In the court are defense attorneys, prosecuting attorneys, and the judge. The U.S. constitutional amendments that apply to this are the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, the Eighth Amendment, and the 14th Amendment. The next step, if the suspect is found guilty, will be correctional. After the defendant is convicted and sentenced, they will be sent to prison or jail unless their sentence is less than 1 year. It will be sent to prison unless their sentence is less than 1 year. Then they'll be sent to jail, county jail. Most, if not all, felonies here in Colorado would fall under the prior. An inmate will receive time off for good behavior off their sentence, usually around 50%. The intake process will at the crime they are convicted and sentenced for in past criminal history, educational history, decide what level of security they need to be held under. The process, the people involved in this case are in the court or appellate court, Supreme Court, if appealed, moves forward. This process, while the suspect is in correction, they will be able to appeal the court's ruling. If the appeal goes forward, there'll be defense lawyers, prosecuting lawyers, and judges involved. The law enforcement involved in this step is correction officers in the prison or jail. The constitutional amendments that apply to this step are the Fifth Amendment, Eighth Amendment, and 14th Amendment. After the suspect convict in this case, has done his sentence, they will be released and post-release. Sometimes during the post-release, they will be on parole for some period of time. The parole will come with conditions. If the convict is unable to follow these conditions, they will be remanded back into jail. The people involved in this step are law enforcement, correction officers, parole officers, and a parole board. The constitutional amendments in this case are the Eighth Amendment, which is no cruel or unusual punishment, and the 14th Amendment, the state cannot deny a person equal protection under the law. Also, the people have the people have the right to due process. And here are my references. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, and I hope this explains the Colorado criminal justice process.